biggest question is, where does Kevin Lee fit into this? Biggest question is, where does Kevin Lee fit in? Biggest question is, where does Kevin Lee fit in?
What time is it then? Please tell these guys.
It's Tony time, bitches!
Welcome to Tony's MMA Corner, the only MMA channel dropping the stunner on Redcoats. I'm your host, Tony Sepulveda! And today, there's plenty to go over in the world of violence since I've been gone from my exotic tropical vacation at the Jersey Shore. But before we get into all that, don't forget to subscribe to my daily email newsletter so I can be all up in your DMs. This past Friday, in yet another painful attempt to make grappling a spectator-friendly sport, the UFC put on another grappling event. Now let's be honest, if it wasn't for the drama between the B team and Gordon Ryan, there would probably be zero eyes on grappling. Well, not zero, it would be me and a handful of other grapplers that are paying attention. As far as the matches themselves, the main event of Craig Jones versus Philly Pena was a huge disappointment. We had two guard pullers decide to do some terrible wrestling for the majority of the match, so much so that the referee had to force them to pull guard. Craig Jones ended up winning via ride time in overtime rules. If it wasn't for those EBI overtime rules, there would have been just about zero action in that match, as both grapplers were highly respectful of each other's jiu-jitsu. And that's the thing with jiu-jitsu. Much like boxing, it's such a specialized sport that it takes away a lot of the excitement. Whereas MMA, there's a lot more ways to win. That's why MMA is the king of violence. The Craig Jones teammate in the B team, Nicky Rod, didn't have a much better performance that night as well, as his matches were also won in EBI overtime. Right now it seems that besides Gordon Ryan, Nicky Rod would be the other face of grappling, at least heavyweight grappling. And his style, let's face it, it's that wrestler style that doesn't really hunt a lot of submissions, especially not when it comes to going up against the top 5 in grappling. So I expect a lot of that from Nicky Rod going forward. That's what makes Gordon Ryan so special. His ability to still finish the best of the best in submission grappling, at least when they're not just trying to stall him. That was the grappling aspect of the event, but now let's go to the promotion aspect of the event, which did a lot better. You have Craig Jones, who is trying very hard to torment Gordon Ryan, after Gordon Ryan and Danaher allowed Craig Jones to train with them for a number of years, which when you think about it, it's kind of messed up, but I guess that's who Craig Jones is. And in this feud, you have Gordon Ryan and Craig Jones. Gordon Ryan is the best grappler in the world. So anything Craig Jones says, Gordon Ryan's always going to point to the fact that he's beaten Craig Jones pretty convincingly several times. And when you think about it, because they are in the world of jiu-jitsu, that's all he really needs to talk about. Craig Jones, on the other hand, has to kind of dig a little deeper, and he has to attack the fact that, at least from the outsider's perspective, that Gordon Ryan takes the sport too seriously. Because I guess Craig Jones doesn't. And it does show, because he is known for getting second place. So he has to be the sort of court jester of jiu-jitsu, because he will never get to the status of Gordon Ryan. So he has to pretend that everything he says is just a joke and shouldn't be taken seriously. So with that approach, he has no liability. And I know all about it because I run a parody MMA channel, so I know all about that angle. And I gotta say, his Keep Jiu-Jitsu Gay campaign, he can miss me with that one. Jiu-Jitsu is gay enough. This past weekend at the UFC Fight Night, Kevin Lee made his return and finally answered the question of where does Kevin Lee fit into all this? And apparently, it's face down on the canvas, unconscious. It is understood that he recently converted to Islam, and his opponent was also Muslim. So apparently, his opponent's Allah was much more powerful. Also this weekend, Sean Strickland had a breakout performance. And Sean Strickland has been an absolute menace this weekend. After starting his career similar to Chael Sonnen, being a very vanilla fighter with not much personality, Sean Strickland has let his personality shine and has used the post and pre-press conferences to his advantage as he absolutely roasts MMA media, much to my pleasure. And his dismantling of a Dagestani fighter, even though he's not part of Khabib's camp, was also very pleasing to Americans all around the world. So Sean Strickland had a hell of a weekend. This weekend is International Fight Week, and I have to say, the card that we have on paper is not the most exciting card that we have seen. Usually, International Fight Weeks have pretty exciting cards. However, we can't get fights for Conor McGregor, we can't get fights for Hamzat, we can't get fights for John Jones. The UFC is struggling to get some of its bigger stars to fight on these big cards. So we have to settle for a less star-studded card. Now don't get me wrong, there are some great fights on this card, but it just doesn't have that International Fight Week feel to it. On to the fights. We have Bo Nickel, the next American Dream, going up against some Hammer-Egger. I expect Bo Nickel to run through said Hammer-Egger as he has done so far in his UFC career. Also on the card, we have Whitaker versus DDP. Now just for the story, I think we would all love DDP to win. One, because he is the best African fighter that's not named Mike Perry. And two, because Robert Whitaker has already fought Israel Adesanya more times than we have Jiu-Jitsu rule sets. However, I happen to watch DDP's fight with Darren Till, and judging by that, I don't think he has much of a chance against Robert Whitaker. Whitaker is a straight savage, and he'd still be champion if it wasn't for Israel Adesanya. So I think Whitaker runs through DDP rather easily. However, now that Sean Strickland is a rising star, maybe that matchup against Israel Adesanya will be the next interesting one. Only time will tell. Also on this card, we have Brandon Moreno versus another little guy. Now I gotta say, after his feud with the other angry little guy, where they had like 8 matches, flyweight is not looking like it's gonna be lasting much longer. Dana White might have that on the chopping block soon. But as far as who wins, I think Brandon Moreno has another successful title defense that nobody cares about. In the main event, we have Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. Now I think this fight's going to be absolutely awesome. As a main event, is it going to draw? That's the question. Volkanovski's great. I love that little midget, but he is not selling pay-per-views on his own. Yair Rodriguez is great. He has a bunch of highlight finishes, but he's another one. On his own, is he selling pay-per-views? I don't think so. But we're going to get a very entertaining bout. As far as who do I think is going to win, I think Volkanovski takes this one, despite Craig Jones making his jiu-jitsu game. It's a good thing, though, that jiu-jitsu is probably not going to play a huge part in this fight. I think these guys are going to stand and bang for our pleasure. So it may not be the star-studded card that we're all used to, but I think it'll still be a solid card. That's it for me, guys. And I'll see you guys next time on Tony's MMA Corner. Stunner! Jiu-Jitsu is gay enough.